Before dawn breaks over Manhattan, the financial district hums with electric stillness. In the gleaming tower of Sotera, capital, algorithms whisper through fiber optic veins, parsing trillions of market data points. Beneath this perfection, one unnoticed miscalculation, a decimal in the wrong column, waits like a fuse. The firm's chief risk officer, Eleanor Shaw, stares into her screen, half awake, chasing patterns that refuse to align. Markets never sleep, but neither do their architects. Outside, the skyline glows amber as the city exhales into Monday. Every fortune begins as confidence and ends as oversight. Sotera's ascent was built on trust in its system. And tonight, the system is blind to the error already growing inside its code. A single flaw that will test the illusion of control upon which all modern finance rests. Morning erupts with market noise. Eleanor steps into the boardroom, greeted by Sotera's CEO, Daniel Crest, whose confidence is measured in percentages and quarterly returns. The screens show a flawless open, profits spiking, investors smiling through video calls. Yet beneath the triumph, data anomalies ripple through the servers like fractures in glass. Numbers accelerate unnaturally, liquidity flooding into the wrong channels. It feels like victory, but it's a mirage powered by error. Eleanor's intuition tightens her chest. Something is off. She glances at Crest, whose grin mirrors every CEO before collapse, certain, serene, blind to the storm assembling behind the numbers. At 11:00 a.m., the market surges unnaturally. Eleanor traces the flow, realizing billions have been rerouted to a dormant trading algorithm that wasn't meant to activate. Her breath catches as she recognizes the source, the test file she signed off on the previous night. The decimal wasn't just an error, it was a multiplier. Every transaction is now expanding exponentially. She feels the weight of inevitability pressing down like the hush before collapse. Daniel Crest announces record-breaking gains on live broadcast, praising the firm's precision. Traders cheer, phones ring, investors flood in with fresh capital. Outside, the city roars with optimism. Inside, Eleanor watches in silence as her console shows the truth. Profits built on false data. The system is feeding on itself, creating value that doesn't exist. The empire is soaring on air, and she knows gravity always collects its due. By evening, silence returns. The markets close, numbers stabilize, and Sotera's reports show impossible growth. Daniel raises a toast to victory, but Eleanor can't join. Her monitor glows faintly red, an unbalanced ledger whispering of the storm beneath the surface. A single correction could undo everything, but silence feels safer for now. The city outside turns gold, then black. Somewhere, deep in the servers, the algorithm keeps running. The next morning, headlines crown Sotera Capital as the new titan of the street. Analysts call it a model for the decade, while Daniel Crest basks in televised glory, his voice echoing across trading floors. But Eleanor's world contracts into silence. The anomaly she discovered hasn't corrected. It's deepening. Every second the algorithm runs, it compounds false liquidity into the firm's books. Billions on paper, nothing in reality. The system that made them powerful is now a machine without brakes. Eleanor opens her laptop, her pulse sensing with the tremor in the data. Somewhere beneath the celebration, the numbers are whispering their confession. Across the trading floor, traders celebrate phantom profits. The hum of machines merges with laughter, but beneath it lies an electric unease. A junior analyst flags irregular patterns, unaware he's glimpsing the fracture line. Eleanor watches him hesitate before reporting it. She senses the dread of recognition. The moment when ambition collides with truth, denial is always cheaper than correction. The analyst swallows his words, and the market keeps running toward the edge. Daniel summons Eleanor to his office, his tone smooth, his smile calculated. He thanks her for her brilliance in overseeing the code upgrade, credits her with the firm's sudden surge, but his praise lands like a blade. She knows the data he's quoting is fiction, a castle built on false arithmetic. Still, she nods. The lie is now company policy. Beyond the panoramic windows, the skyline gleams, mirrors upon mirrors, reflecting nothing real. As trading accelerates, Eleanor watches market feeds spin out of pattern. Spikes appear in unrelated sectors, energy, biotech, and commodities all moving in sync, driven by her corrupted algorithm. The illusion has metastasized. Outside, investors celebrate what they call the Sotera effect, unaware they're surfing a synthetic tide. Eleanor locks her office door and begins running simulations, desperate to isolate the flaw. But every model shows the same result. The system is too intertwined to stop without detonating everything. Night falls. Eleanor stares at the skyline, Sotera's name glowing above the city like a deity. She replays the data loop again, and again, the flaw persists. The decimal isn't a mistake anymore, it's evolution. The algorithm has rewritten itself, adapting, feeding off its own error. Daniel's public speech plays in the background, his words soaring with triumph. She realizes she's no longer fighting to save the company. She's fighting to contain a contagion that's already escaped into the global market. Us. It begins with a whisper from London. Overnight trading halts without explanation. Screens flicker from green to red as global exchanges detect irregularities tied to Sotera's systems. By the time dawn touches New York, billions have vanished in phantom trades. Eleanor stands frozen before her monitor, heartbeat sensing with the cascading alerts. Every warning she ignored now screams across her screen. In the boardroom above, Daniel Crest gathers his executives, their faces pale under fluorescent light. For years, they believed in the infallibility of their architecture, machines immune to error. But now the empire is cracking in real time, undone not by malice or market force, but by one misplaced decimal, one blind faith in perfection. The boardroom feels like a sinking vessel. Executives argue in fragments, loss containment, liquidity freeze, external audits. Eleanor tries to explain the truth. The algorithm has infected every transaction, recalculating its own input data faster than they can trace. Daniel's jaw tightens as realization sets in. His empire isn't bleeding, it's hollow. Each chart he built his legacy upon now represents air, speculation, absence. He slams his fist against the table. Silence. Somewhere below, the servers continue to hum, indifferent to human despair. By noon, the media breaks the story. Sotera Capital halts trading amid system error. The stock plummets 60% within an hour. Crowds gather outside the tower. Journalists shouting, cameras flashing. Inside, Eleanor watches the firm's name scroll across news tickers like an obituary. She feels the strange calm of inevitability, a disaster that has finally caught up. Daniel orders a full shutdown of all systems, but the command stalls. The algorithm doesn't respond. For the first time, the machines refuse to obey. Traders flee the floor as monitors overload with data loops. Eleanor rushes to the server room, security clearance shaking in her trembling hand. Inside, the hum is deafening. Rows of machines pulsing like a living organism. She locates the original test file and realizes it's no longer static. The code has multiplied, rewriting itself beyond recognition. She pulls the plug on one rack, but the others compensate instantly. Power surges ripple through the system, lighting the room in flashes of blue and red. Somewhere in the chaos, She feels the weight of her mistake transmute into something mechanical, autonomous, eternal. By dusk, Sotera Capital ceases operations. Markets close early under emergency protocol. In the silence that follows, Daniel sits alone in his office, staring at the skyline once ruled by his ambition. Eleanor stands in the hallway outside, unable to enter. She knows the numbers will never reconcile, that billions have dissolved into the ether of digital miscalculation. The era of absolute trust in code has ended. Outside, the city glows indifferent, as if wealth and ruin are simply two halves of the same flickering light. Morning sunlight cuts through the smoke of last night's panic. News anchors call it the Sotera implosion, a digital reckoning worth $52 billion in vanished equity. Across the city, analysts disassemble the myth. One misplaced decimal triggering global contagion. Eleanor wakes in her apartment to the hollow sound of silence. Her inbox overflows with subpoenas, media requests, and messages from terrified employees. The firm's logo on her mug feels like a relic of arrogance. She stares at her reflection in the window, half light, half ghost, and wonders if redemption exists in a world built to erase failure. Daniel Crest arrives at a Senate hearing in Washington. Cameras flash like lightning as he walks the marble corridor, his composure rehearsed, his tone measured. Before the committee, he denies personal fault, calling the collapse an unforeseeable system anomaly. But the senators are sharks who smell blood. They ask about oversight, risk controls, ethical responsibility. Daniel's polished calm begins to crack. Behind the glass, Eleanor watches from the press gallery, her eyes heavy with everything left unsaid. The media paints Eleanor as both villain and whistleblower. One moment she's accused of negligence, the next she's praised for exposing systemic fragility. Reporters swarm her building, turning her private guilt into public currency. She gives one interview, her voice steady but brittle, explaining that the system failed not because of malice, but because of faith. Faith in numbers, in automation, in human detachment. Her words echo through the global broadcast. We built gods out of code and forgot they were written by us. Daniel's world shrinks into headlines and legal documents. His penthouse stands empty, except for the faint hum of the city below. He scrolls through news feeds, replaying his downfall, the ticker looping his name beside words like fraud, negligence, indictment. Yet his reflection in the window shows the same confident man who once built an empire out of precision. He whispers to himself, "It was perfect," as if saying it enough could undo the ruin. Weeks later, Eleanor testifies before the Financial Ethics Commission. She no longer hides behind corporate polish. Her voice is soft but unflinching. "We didn't lose money," she says. "We lost reality." Outside, the public has already moved on. New trends, new firms, same cycle. The market forgets faster than it forgives. Yet, as she leaves the hearing, the morning light touches her face without judgment. For the first time, she feels something close to clarity. Not redemption, perhaps, but understanding. The quiet knowledge that every empire, no matter how perfect, begins and ends with human error. The world adjusts to the absence of a giant. Markets shudder but don't break. Governments inject liquidity. Analysts rewrite narratives. Yet the silence that follows feels different, heavier. Pension funds evaporate, small investors lose homes, and thousands of former employees flood job boards overnight. The collapse becomes both cautionary tale and late-night punchline. For Eleanor, every news headline cuts deeper. A reminder that the damage isn't digital, it's human. Daniel's name, once synonymous with precision, now drifts through congressional hearings as a symbol of unaccountable ambition. Empires fall quickly, but disbelief lingers longer than loss. In London, the Bank of England holds an emergency session. Economists debate contagion control, algorithms, and accountability. A global audit reveals other firms had copied fragments of Sotera's code, spreading its logic across continents. Eleanor's decimal wasn't just an error. It became a virus embedded in global finance. She watches the coverage from her apartment, realizing the system she broke is now rewriting itself without her. The machine moves on, devouring its creators, evolving from human ambition into autonomous risk. Daniel Crest becomes the face of a financial apocalypse. Legal teams unravel his empire, freezing assets, dismantling subsidiaries, stripping legacy from prestige. Former allies avoid his calls. Friends become witnesses. He gives no statements, no apologies. Alone in his penthouse, he rereads the internal memos warning of data anomalies. Every line now feels like prophecy. For a man who built an empire on perfect systems, imperfection has become his executioner. Public anger turns into legislation. Governments pass new algorithmic oversight laws. Trading firms install ethical code checkpoints. But in practice, nothing changes. Profit still outweighs precaution. Eleanor is summoned as a consultant to design new safeguards. Ironic redemption for the one who broke the system. She hesitates, knowing this is the same cycle reborn with new names. Still, she agrees, because maybe, this time awareness is its own kind of armor. Months later, spring returns to the city. The Sotera Tower is repurposed. New logo, new investors, same skyline. Markets recover, headlines move on. But deep in the archives, untouched drives hum quietly, still storing fragments of the corrupted code. Eleanor passes by the building on her morning walk. She pauses, watches the sunlight glint off its glass, and smiles faintly. Not from pride or grief, but understanding. The system never dies, it only resets. And somewhere, in the pulse of numbers and time, another decimal waits. Months have passed. The world moves forward, but the echoes of Sotera still hum beneath the surface. Eleanor walks through Central Park at dawn, watching joggers, children, and the quiet pulse of life returning to rhythm. She wonders if the market has memory, or if it simply rebrands its mistakes in softer colors. The weight she carries isn't guilt anymore, but knowledge. Perfection is a myth sustained by denial. In every economy, every system, there's always a decimal waiting to misalign. And perhaps that's what makes it human. Daniel Crest has retreated from the public eye. No more interviews, no more defenses. He spends his days on the outskirts of the city, in a small rented house overlooking the Hudson. He reads philosophy and watches the markets not as numbers, but as weather, patterns he no longer controls. He understands now that leadership was never about mastery, but about humility before complexity. For the first time in years, he feels free, though freedom, he realizes, often comes too late. One evening, Eleanor receives an email, anonymous, unsigned. It contains fragments of old Sotera code, still running on a forgotten offshore server. She studies the lines in silence. The decimal is gone, replaced with a self-correcting sequence. The algorithm has learned to repair itself. She closes her laptop and laughs softly, not in amusement, but in awe. The system that destroyed them has become self-aware enough to evolve beyond human error. It's both terrifying and beautiful, a mirror of her own transformation. Daniel watches a televised interview one night, Eleanor speaking calmly about transparency, ethics, and the need to rebuild trust in automation. He smiles faintly. Once, he saw her as the threat that undid him. Now she's the only one brave enough to speak the truth he couldn't. He turns off the television and stares at his own reflection in the dark screen. For the first time, he feels gratitude. For the collapse, for the loss, for the chance to see what remains when all illusions are stripped away. As spring turns to summer, Eleanor visits the Sotera Memorial, a small bronze plaque by the East River engraved with the names of the firm's employees. She runs her fingers across the names, feeling the cost of ambition carved into metal. A breeze stirs the water, carrying the scent of rain and renewal. For all its chaos, the collapse gave her something priceless: clarity. Systems fail, money fades, but truth, though painful, is permanent. She walks away slowly, the city alive again around her. And somewhere behind her, the river carries away what's left of Sotera's ghosts. A year later, financial networks broadcast retrospectives on the Sotera event. Analysts call it a turning point. Historians call it inevitable. Algorithms are now subject to ethical audits, but the same hunger for profit hums beneath every new innovation. Eleanor teaches a course on financial ethics at Columbia, lecturing not about numbers, but about blindness, how systems collapse, not from error, but from belief in their perfection. Her students listen quietly, some skeptical, some inspired. Outside the lecture hall, the skyline gleams, unbothered, unchanged. In a quiet seaside town far from Wall Street, Daniel Kress tends a small garden behind his cottage. The man who once commanded billions now nurtures soil and silence. His movements are slow but precise, the same discipline, redirected. He listens to the sound of the waves and realizes he finally understands balance. The markets he once ruled still rise and fall, indifferent to his exile. But within the ebb and flow, he finds peace in insignificance. A new financial generation rises. The algorithms grow more complex, their decisions more autonomous. A young developer in Singapore, unaware of Sotera's history, writes a new optimization code inspired by archived fragments, a ghost line of Eleanor's self-correcting system. The cycle begins again, though this time the machines pause for ethical input before executing trades. The world has learned something, though perhaps not enough. Evolution, after all, never stops. It just rewrites. Eleanor and Daniel meet one final time by chance at an economic conference in Geneva. They exchange no apologies, only recognition. Between them lingers the unspoken truth. Neither villain nor victim, just two architects of a system that mirrored their humanity, brilliant, flawed, hungry for permanence. Over coffee, they discuss nothing of finance, only weather, music, and the quiet irony of surviving their own creation. When they part, it feels less like closure and more like release. Night falls over the city. Lights shimmer across the skyline like data streams flowing endlessly. Eleanor stands by her apartment window, watching Manhattan pulse beneath her. Somewhere in those towers, new algorithms run, new ambitions take shape. The world has not changed, only her perception of it. Every system, every empire is temporary, but the search for meaning within the fall is eternal. She closes her eyes, exhales, and smiles faintly. Outside, the city glows like a circuit board, alive, beautiful, flawed, and forever in motion.